Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Native Echo Podcast, where we make English simple and enjoyable. I'm Harper.
And I'm Julian. Hello to all of our wonderful listeners wherever you are in the world right now.
Julian, before we start, something happened to me this morning, and I really need to talk about it.
Oh no, what happened?
So, I got into the elevator in my building, and my neighbor got in at exactly the same time. We have lived in the same building for about 2 years. I see this person maybe 3 times a week.
Okay, and?
And we stood there in complete silence for 6 floors, both of us looking at our phones like our lives depended on it. Nobody said a single word. And when the doors finally opened, we both said, "Have a good day," at exactly the same time, and then walked in opposite directions as fast as humanly possible.
6 floors of silence. That is genuinely painful to imagine.
It was so uncomfortable. And the worst part is, I wanted to say something. I was standing there thinking, okay, say something. Just say anything at all. And my brain went completely empty, like someone turned off the lights inside my head.
Your brain just crashed.
Completely crashed. And I ended up standing there pretending to read a message that did not exist.
I have done that exact thing more than once. You scroll through your phone with this very serious face like you are dealing with something extremely important.
And you are absolutely not dealing with anything important. You're just avoiding eye contact with another human being.
And that is actually a perfect way to start today because that is exactly what we are talking about. Small talk. Why is it so hard? Why do we sometimes freeze completely when we just need to say something casual and simple to another person?
And listeners, if this sounds familiar to you, if you have ever stood in silence with someone and wished you could just say something easy and natural, this episode is for you. Stay with us because by the end, you are going to have real tools, real phrases, and a completely different way of thinking about small talk. And also, we want to hear from you. Have you ever had a moment like my elevator situation? Tell us in the comments. Even one sentence is great practice.
Okay, so Harper, let me ask you something. When you hear the words small talk, what is the first feeling that comes up for you?
Honestly, a little bit of dread.
Dread. That is a strong word. What does dread mean exactly?
Dread is that heavy, uncomfortable feeling you get before something you really do not want to do. Like when you know something slightly unpleasant is coming and your whole body says, please no.
So small talk gives you dread, even though it is just simple conversation.
That is exactly the strange thing. It's supposed to be the easiest kind of conversation. The weather, the weekend, how are you? Nothing deep, nothing complicated. And yet, for so many people, it feels harder than having an actual serious conversation.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because with small talk, there are no rules. With a real conversation, there's a reason. You're solving a problem, making a plan, sharing something important. But with small talk, the whole point is just to fill the space. And filling space feels awkward because it has no real purpose.
Right. You're not really exchanging information, you're just connecting. And connecting without a reason feels strange to a lot of people.
And for English learners, I think it feels even harder because in your own language, you do small talk automatically. You don't think about it. But in English, you're suddenly very aware of every word and every pause and every silence.
That awareness is actually exhausting. You're having a conversation and also watching yourself have a conversation at the same time.
It's like trying to walk while thinking very carefully about how to walk. Suddenly you forget how legs work.
That's such a good way to describe it. Okay, so let's talk about what small talk actually is, because I think there's a misunderstanding about it.
What do you mean?
A lot of people think small talk is fake, like it's meaningless and nobody actually cares about the weather or what you did on the weekend.
And in some ways, they're right. Nobody is genuinely fascinated by whether it rained on Tuesday.
Right, but that's actually the whole point. Small talk isn't really about the topic. The topic is just a vehicle. A vehicle is something that carries you somewhere. In this case, the topic carries you toward connection with another person.
I like that. So when you ask someone, busy week, you're not actually asking about their schedule. You're saying, I see you. I'm willing to talk to you. I'm friendly.
Exactly. Small talk is a social signal. It tells the other person, I'm safe, I'm approachable, we can share this space comfortably.
And when you don't do it, when you just stand in silence, it doesn't mean you're unfriendly necessarily, but it can feel that way to the other person.
Which makes everyone uncomfortable, and then the silence gets bigger and heavier with every second.
The silence compounds. Every second you don't speak, it gets harder to speak.
That is so true. After about 10 seconds of silence, the moment has passed, and now it would feel strange to suddenly start talking.
So the window closes, and you both just stare at your phones until the elevator reaches your floor.
And then you say, "Have a good day," at exactly the same time and walk in opposite directions as fast as humanly possible.
In opposite directions.
Classic. Okay, listeners, here's a question for you. When is small talk hardest for you? Is it with strangers, with colleagues at work, with people you kind of know but not very well? Tell us in the comments. I think the answers will be really interesting.
I want to know too, because for me personally, the hardest small talk is not with strangers. It's with people I see regularly but don't actually know, like my elevator neighbor.
Say more about that.
So, with a total stranger in an airplane or in a waiting room, there's actually no pressure. You'll never see them again. So, if it goes badly, it doesn't matter. And with close friends, there's no small talk at all. You just talk. But with the in-between people, the ones you see all the time but have never really spoken to, there's this weird pressure, like there's an established silence, and breaking it feels almost like admitting something.
Admitting what?
Admitting that you probably should have said something months ago, and now it's been 2 years and you've never introduced yourself, and it's a little strange.
So the longer the silence between two people goes on, the harder it gets to break it.
Which is why so many people just keep the silence going forever. It's easier in the moment, even though it's more uncomfortable overall.
That is very human. We avoid the small discomfort now, even though it means a bigger discomfort for a long time.
Exactly. Okay, so now that we understand why small talk is hard, let's talk about something practical. How do you actually get better at it?
Because it can be learned. This is important. Small talk is a skill, and like any skill, it gets easier the more you practice it.
I want to say something about this because I think a lot of people believe you're either a natural at small talk or you're not. Some people seem to find it completely effortless, and others struggle every single time.
And effortless means it feels completely natural and easy. No extra effort, no overthinking.
But here's the truth. The people who seem effortless at small talk, they practiced a lot. They were uncomfortable too, at some point. They just did it enough times that it started to feel normal.
So step 1 is accepting that you will feel a little awkward at the beginning and doing it anyway.
Which is hard because the awkward feeling makes you want to avoid it, which means you never practice, which means it never gets easier.
A cycle. Avoid it because it's uncomfortable, never practice because you avoid it, never improve because you never practice, keep avoiding because you never improve.
Breaking that cycle is the first real step.
Okay, so what are some actual practical things you can do? Because I want to give our listeners something they can use today, not next week, today.
Okay, the first thing is what I call a safe opener. A safe opener is a phrase you already have ready before the moment arrives. You don't have to come up with it in the moment. You already have it.
Like having a phrase in your pocket.
Exactly, something in your pocket. And the good news is, safe openers are extremely simple, almost embarrassingly simple. Things like busy day or cold today, right? Or even just I love your bag, where is it from?
Those are so simple that people might think, is that really enough?
That is really enough. Small talk does not need to be clever. It does not need to be interesting. It just needs to open the door. Once the door is open, the conversation can go anywhere.
Or it can say very short, and that's fine too.
Completely fine. Not every small talk conversation becomes a real conversation. Sometimes you say, busy day? The person says, yeah, a little. You both smile, and that's the whole interaction. And that is a success.
A success. I like that, because I think people judge themselves too harshly. They think if the conversation doesn't go somewhere amazing, it was a failure, but that's not how it works.
Small talk is not about having a fascinating conversation. It's about not being weird in the elevator.
Simple goal, not weird in the elevator. I can work with that.
Okay, second practical thing, and this one is about what you do after the opener, because a lot of people have the opener, but then the conversation dies immediately after the first response.
What do you mean?
So you say, cold today, right? And the person says, yeah, really cold. And then nothing. Both of you waiting for something to happen. That's what people call a dead end.
A dead end, like a road that suddenly stops and goes nowhere.
Exactly. And the way to avoid a dead end is to add what I call a soft follow-up. A soft follow-up is a small, natural comment or question after the first exchange, something that keeps the door open a little longer without pressure.
Can you give an example?
Sure. So you say, cold today, right? They say, yeah, really cold. And then you add something like, I'm so not ready for winter, to be honest. Or, I keep forgetting to bring a proper jacket. Something small and personal that invites them to respond, but doesn't force them to.
And inviting without forcing is the key. You're giving them an opening, but if they want to end the conversation there, they can.
Right, no pressure. You just left the door open a little longer. I think this is where a lot of people get stuck, actually. They're so worried about what to say next that they can't listen to what the other person is saying, and then the conversation feels strange because you're not really present in it.
That's such a good point. One of the most underrated small talk skills is just listening, actually listening, not preparing your next sentence while the other person is talking, just listening.
Because when you actually listen, the next thing to say usually comes naturally. The other person gives you something to respond to.
They always do. Every sentence